Pursuant to Section 84-1411 of the Nebraska statutes, notice of this meeting was given on April 16, 2021. The meeting will convene at 6:30 p.m., and visitors may obtain a request to be heard form from staff for any presentation they may have for the meeting. In accordance with policy, the request to be heard forms must be submitted to the Secretary within the first 5 minutes of the board meeting in order to be heard at this meeting. Agenda items are subject to reordering at the discretion of the board president. Please attend the entire meeting to ensure you are able to hear any discussion.
Have a crazy year, so our practice regimen was really who's going to be here today and what are we going to try to accomplish. So it was kind of an eye focus on
Pursuant to Section 84-1411 of the Nebraska statutes, the next regular meeting of the Board of Education of Douglas County School District 0001 and the Board of Educational Service Unit Number 19 will be held on Monday, May 3rd, 2021, at 6:30 p.m. in the Board Meeting Room of the Teacher Administrative Center, 3215 Cummings Street. The agenda will be kept current and available for public inspection in the Office of the Secretary of the Board of Education at the Administrative Building during regular working hours. Pursuant to Section 84-1412 of the Nebraska statutes, the public is hereby informed that a current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is posted in the Board Meeting Room on the north wall. Please join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Vice President Erdenberger will lead us in the OPS vision and mission statement.
The vision: every student, every day, prepared for success. The mission: to prepare all students for success in college, career, and life.
Roll call, Mr. Ray.
Cassidy,
Here.
Erdenberger,
Here.
Head, here, Holman,
Present.
Cracky,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Snipes,
Present.
Snope,
Here.
Thielen.
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. Next, we have Jeremy Maskell with School Spotlight.
Good evening, President Holman, Vice President Erdenberger, members of the board, and Superintendent Logan. Our OPS Proud Spotlight tonight features the athletic achievement of North High School's sophomore, Tyler Stewart. Mr. Stewart won the NSAA State Wrestling Championship this year for his weight class. In the video, we'll hear from Tyler and Coach Carlson about the path to state.
Just kind of a crazy year, so our practice regimen was really who's going to be here today and what are we going to try to accomplish. So it's kind of a thing I focus on is you have to come to the room willing to work hard and to be coachable.
You know, and another thing I thought about afterwards, I was the only OPS state champ this year. It's one of the hardest high school sports to, to succeed in. So I like that.
Coach 18 years in a couple different districts, and I've always kind of had a set, scheduled practice regimen from, the beginning of the year. We do a lot of teaching, a lot of, trying to get in shape, to phasing into after Christmas, really trying to pinpoint districts.
There, and I wrestled like my first term of the year. I only lost one match all year, and it was the first term of the year. And that kid was actually ranked #1 in the state, and I lost to him. And then I just kind of bounced back and wrestled a few duels, and then got up to districts and won my district, which helped me get a better seed for state.
Congratulations to Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Maskell. Moving on to Board and Superintendent Communications. Dr. Logan.
Good evening, President Holman, Vice President Erdenberger, members of the board, those here in attendance, and those watching the live stream. Tomorrow, our sophomores will have the opportunity to take the pre-ACT. Freshmen, juniors, and seniors will not attend school tomorrow to minimize disruption during testing. The pre-ACT is modeled after the ACT testing experience. The exam assesses competency within the 4 ACT test subject areas: English, math, reading, and science. This allows our students the experience to practice and prepare for taking the ACT in the future. Our schools use these results to provide both current support and to project future scores. We ask that our sophomores arrive at school on time, no later than 7:40 a.m. tomorrow. Our high schools will serve breakfast prior to sending students to testing room shortly after the bell rings. Testing will begin promptly at 8 a.m. Just a reminder to students to please go to bed early, and early is 10 o'clock, before 10 o'clock. Each high school will provide families with information regarding post-test activities and release information. Students currently enrolled in the remote learning program should have received details about on-site testing. Parents with questions should contact their student's school. This past Wednesday, we hosted a bond program tour for the media, giving them a first-hand glimpse at the on-budget, ahead of schedule progress of the 2018 bond program. The tour featured a peek inside the future Buena Vista High School, located at 60th and L. Special thanks to our staff for leading the tour, our Chief Operations Officer, Dr. Lisa Sturber, who enthusiastically led the tour and did media, our future principal of Westview High School at 156th and Ida Streets, Mr. Thomas Lee, and the future principal of Buena Vista High School at 60th and L, Dr. Carrie Carr. The passing of the $409 million bond in May of 2018 set the stage for the construction of 5 new schools, 2 high schools, 1 middle school, and 2 elementary schools. Additionally, the bond includes upgrades for nearly 20 other schools, from HVAC and energy management systems upgrades to new doors, windows, roofs, ceilings, and lighting. We are looking forward to taking board members on a tour sometime in May, I believe. We're very excited about that opportunity. Later tonight, you will receive an update on the status of the Family Engagement and Stakeholder Communication Plan for our Career Academies and Pathways program. I'd like to thank Mrs. Crystal Boyd and Dr. John Crow for being here tonight and for meeting with a group of stakeholders last Thursday, if I believe correctly, to inform the plan moving forward. We look forward to receiving input from our families and stakeholders later this spring into early summer as we consider the best path forward for expanding access to high-quality program for all students in our district. On Saturday, in this very room, more than 300 students said yes to the dress at the prom event for the outdoor dances that will occur starting in early May. Our young people expressed so much appreciation for the variety of dresses available, as well as the personal shopping experience. Each young person worked directly with a personal shopper to find the perfect dress. And I have to tell you, it's much harder than people give it credit for. We want to thank our local area businesses for their immense display of support. Dillard's, Max I. Walker, J.C. Penney, Von Maur, Hilton Hotels, Goodwill, Omaha Lace Cleaners, and of course the Omaha Public Schools Foundation. Also, thank you to the amazing group of volunteers who dedicated their Saturday to support our students. A huge thank you to our wonderful Rhoda Crawford, who supports the superintendent, and to Lisa Utterback, our Chief of Student and Community Services, and the many women of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and to Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, who came out in big numbers to support our students, as well as many members of the Student and Community Services team. Our students deserve an amazing experience. We look forward to hosting these events at 7 high schools in the upcoming weeks. On Saturday, the Omaha Public Schools Foundation had their annual Vend Nebraska fundraiser. It was fantastic. Thank you to those who were able to attend and support the 2021 virtual Vend Nebraska event hosted by the Omaha Public Schools Foundation. More than 400 guests enjoyed some virtual fun this past Saturday evening. All proceeds will support classroom projects for our teachers this upcoming fall. On Saturday, each of our high schools and 8 of our middle schools participated in the 100 Black Men of Omaha's 21st Annual African American History Challenge. I know the winners, but I can't say them. They're going to announce them next week. 45 students have been studying on their own time and through monthly study review sessions hosted by the 100 Black Men of Omaha and the Great Plains Black History Museum since December. The challenge took place at the Omaha Home for Boys campus. The winner of the junior and senior division will compete in the national competition this June. We will share the results of the competition soon. Congratulations and kudos to McMillan Middle School 7th and 8th grade academic pentathlon teams for qualifying for the National Academic Pentathlon Finals. This is the 11th year in a row that McMillan's team has qualified. I think there's some applause out there, or somebody just pushing their hands together. But I would give them applause for their amazing work in the academic pentathlon. And if I remember this correctly, the McMillan team also did some tremendous work with the Science Bowl this past weekend, and we'll have that information at the next board meeting. But they really they won, and I think 9 of the 16 categories, if I remember correctly. So congratulations, McMillan, doing big things at McMillan Middle School. Congratulations to Carrie Palmisano, the 2021-2022 Nebraska English Language Arts Teacher of the Year. Teacher of Excellence. She is a teacher at South High School. This award is sponsored by the Nebraska English Language Arts Council and the National Council for the Teachers of English. It's a really prestigious award, and congratulations, Ms. Palmisano. All Omaha Public Schools Nebraska Young Artist Award winners: Burke High School, Anthony Wada, Film and Emerging Media Arts; Central High School, Daisy Friedman, one of my faves for theater arts; North High School, Brenna Jean-Paul for visual arts; and South High School, Lucia Rebollo for dance. And for the 23 Omaha Public School students recognized as World Language Scholars this year. A job well done. We salute your achievements. Lastly, in attendance this evening, we have our pending board approval. We have our Chief Talent Officer, Mr. Cecil Hicks, who is here with his family this evening. So we look forward to welcoming you and are very excited that you're here with us, Mr. Hicks. You can applaud. It's fine to applaud. Mr. Hicks has two children who are also here today, a freshman at Central High School and seventh grader, do I get that right? Seventh grader at Macmillan Middle School. So we are tickled to have both of you here and welcome you aboard. Also present is Dr. Fatima Fulmore, who was selected to be our Chief Accountability Officer. We are very thrilled to have you here too, Ms. Fulmore, Dr. Fulmore. On the agenda tonight, you will see a position, just in case there are questions, that for the Executive Director, that position replaces one of our principal supervisors' position, Dr. Fulmore, my apologies, I know that this is new, so I apologize, is vacating the position, and rather than, we were never going to add a new FTE, we repurposed the position, but just in case there are questions, I wanted to make sure that was clear. So thank you so much, and back to you, Dr. Holman.
Thank you, Dr. Logan. Board members, Ms. Cracky.
I just want to say the same thing I've said before and I missed last time. It's all about summer school right now. So it's a good opportunity for academic recovery or anything you've missed during the year. I know that they're planning good things and big things for you. I hope you've all gotten some information in the mail and that you are sending it in. And I don't know the numbers yet of who is going to all be attending. And if someone knows those, could you provide them? Does anyone know what our count is?
We are going to have an update at the first board meeting in May when the numbers are complete.
Well, we'll look forward to that. And in the meantime, please don't let this slide. Get in there and register. Call, whatever you have to do. I'm looking forward to having the numbers given to us, and I hope just about everybody out there is considering this. Thank you. I did want to say something else about that. The 60th and L Buena Vista School was featured in the World Herald, and it was so gorgeous. And it was so beautiful, and the outlook all over the place. I can't wait till we go and see that. I just can't wait to see it. It's a little bit different than any of our other buildings have been. And we have some others that are very unique also. So this one, it was on the hill so they could see everywhere, every direction out of it, and that's terrific. So I'm looking forward to that and our tour as soon as possible.
It is exciting news, Ms. Cracky. I'm excited just as much. Thank you so much. Ms. Snipes.
I have to second that. As a South Omaha girl especially, I ride past there often. I'm looking forward to taking the tour as well. I wanted to share a few things. Last week, I had the opportunity to visit with students from the College of St. Mary for a themed series they're hosting on anti-Blackness in American society. These young people are future teachers. We discussed what anti-Blackness means to me, as well as how I see it playing out currently in regards to education. And so it was a really great conversation. I'm just very, very excited by the future when I see these young people who are going to be teachers. I also wanted to thank teachers who reached out to me this weekend. There was some violence this weekend that occurred, and I can't express enough how much I appreciate the care and the concern of our teachers when it comes to our babies. Because as educators, these are our babies, and I will continue to make myself as available as possible to have these conversations when you reach out to me. I also want to thank Dr. Logan for her immediate response to it, what happened this weekend. When violence like this happens, like Dr. Logan mentioned earlier today when we were talking, it involves young people. There's a chance they can carry over into our schools. And so her relationship with the school administrators and quick action are really just greatly appreciated by me, and I know by others in the community as well who are, of course, worried about our babies. And so on a positive note, I want to thank the district for the opportunity to attend the National School Board Association Conference. As a lover of information, I appreciated the opportunity to learn. I was able to attend sessions on creating budgets, leading with optimism, and even more. And so I'm excited to take what I've learned and really digest that and discuss it with my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Snipes. I would like to echo a comment that Dr. Logan made earlier and give a huge shout out to district staff and administration and all of the vendors who made it possible for our young ladies to have such an incredible time this Saturday. It was just really, really amazing. I mean, I was sweating in here, and I'm sure the other people were too. But like she said, being a personal shopper, you think it's easy, but boy, it is not easy because you have to find every single element that these girls wanted in their dresses and trying them on. But it was so much fun, and it was even more fun saying, she said yes to their dress, and everybody started screaming and clapping. So it was such an amazing and wonderful experience, excuse me, for all these young ladies. And I'm just very appreciative to everybody that contributed to their time this weekend in celebration of these young ladies. Any other board colleagues? Ms. Erdenberger.
Thank you. First, I want to give a shout out to my Field Club elementary students. They participated in Field Club Days last week by decorating the fence around the school with inspirational and loving slogans, posters all around the way. It was a celebration of the Field Club neighborhood 20th year recognition as a historic district. My next favorite thing to do is let you know some of the cool stuff that we're doing in the consent agenda, which otherwise just kind of flies by. 1.4 and 1.5 on the consent agenda both represent savings in our construction budget at Caitlin Elementary and Conestoga for a total of $395,000. Now, this doesn't mean we're just going to send it back to the bondholders. What we're going to do is it stays in the bond fund, and for those projects that might not be as lucky as Caitlin and Conestoga were in terms of weather and overages and whatnot, we will apply the money to other projects. 1.12 on the consent agenda is some repairs at Central, most of which are pretty ordinary and not particularly interesting, except they are going to be replacing the Sky Dome over the Commons area in Central. It was most recently replaced and built was in the 1980s. So 40 years later, believe it or not, there's different and better ways to do it. And I learned a new word. They're going to be replacing the clerestories. Did you see that on there? And those are the little extra windows that are around the sides to give more. Anyway, just in case that you ever are on Jeopardy. 118 is, I would just want to point out, there's an auction coming up. Go to gpsold.com. OPS is going to be auctioning off a bunch of stuff, most of which is pretty predictable, like, you know, overhead projector carts and whatnot. But you might be interested in knowing that there are 109 Northwest band uniforms, 40 French horns, 30 clarinets, 22 trombones. Do you see where this is going? Got a little song going. 4 xylophones and glockenspiels, 3 tubas, and a child puppet center. Go to that website. You can visit and do a open house to look at the materials because, as you can imagine, they're not all in great shape. And then the bids will be May 8th through 15th, I believe it is. Yep. And last but not least, our beautiful Buena Vista High School that we were just talking about. One of the items on the consent agenda tonight is we are considering adding 7.5 acres to that property. Subject to approval and environmental clearances and whatnot, the site that we have for that school just might be getting a little bigger to the east. And if we acquire that property, one of the good pieces of news is that the frontage road that comes down along that way, we'll be able to close it off. So lots of interesting things happening on the consent agenda, and I guess that's the next thing we do.
Thank you, Vice President Erdeberger. I was waiting for you to say "in a partridge in a pear tree" at the end of the list. Okay, moving on to consent agenda. I will entertain. Sorry, I always forget public comment. I apologize for that. Mr. Donnie, I'm sorry, I do not have my glasses today, so I cannot read your last name. Could you please come on up for public comment?
I called her down in Houston. I asked her to call NASA to see what the age limit cutoff to want to be a pilot or astronaut.
That's quite all right. Well, could you give us your name and spell it along with your address as well?
Donnie Johnson, North Omaha Concerned Citizen Foundation, the Johnson in Question Foundation, 4928 North 52nd. Good evening, board members. I think about all the time when Andrew Young and I studied on at Creighton University, and I kept asking myself, why did he go live with the homeless so many years to figure out how to get things done? I think I finally figured it out. Dating back to 1969, Mrs. Naird Littlejohn became a teacher in this building. Yet us sophomore boys couldn't believe someone so beautiful would teach at Tech High School. Brown versus Ferguson, Brown versus Board of Education, historical landmark. Nebraska can make history. Board of Education versus United Negro College Fund, Board of Education versus Democratic Black Caucus, Board of Education versus NAACP, Board of Education versus Southern Baptist Leadership Conference. These organizations continue using African Americans' name all the way back to the years of 1960. We the people need to examine their financial records to understand where the money is being paid out and to whom. Kentucky Fried Chicken, McDonald's, Walmart, these are franchise names. Being black is the same. You can't use our name unless we the people allow you to use our name. Excuse me. I believe the education for young people in West Africa, North Africa, and East Africa, I believe these programs are wonderful, and I believe the Peace Corps shall and will be very helpful for African Americans in Omaha, Nebraska, and the United States of America. In closing, I was watching gang unit documentary, and some of the gang members said to the police, "You want us to go home and listen to this nonsense? I had a dream." It shocked me that young African Americans think that way. The Peace Corps is a good opportunity for young people to understand America and other countries outside America. I hope, we can continue moving down that path and get that building, and at the same time, I can keep studying. When I go back again overseas, why University of Nebraska, Omaha, told me they're not giving me no more money to go down and study in Zimbabwe, so I can see why all those beautiful ladies going up to Jehovah Fall. She said for me to save money for the next generation. So if they don't take the money, can those old folks have it? Have a good day.
Thank you so much. And for the record, public comment did begin at 6:52 p.m. Now moving on to the consent agenda. And I will entertain a motion for the consent agenda that is before us.
So moved. Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Smith and seconded by Ms. Snipes. Any abstentions?
Yes, Dr. Holman. I'm back with Claim C. I need to abstain from item I8, Claim C, please. And I believe I might have someone else next to me that is on there as well, Mr. Snow. I believe you're on Claim C as well.
I'll need to abstain from Claim C as well.
Thank you. There's an abstention for both Ms. Cassidy and Mr. Snow for item I8, Claim C. Roll call, Mr. Ray.
Holman.
Aye.
Cracky. Aye. Smith.
Aye.
Snipes.
Aye.
Snow.
Aye.
Thielen.
Aye.
Cassidy.
Aye.
Erdenberger.
Aye.
Head.
Aye.
9-9.
Motion carries. Moving on to action items. Item J1A, approval of the report of the Legislative Committee, including recommended legislative positions. Mr. Head.
Thank you, President Dr. Holman. We actually do not have any new positions that we're asking the board to take today. Legislature was in recess today, but tomorrow is day 63 of the 90-day session, so the end is in sight. Up this Friday, we have our OSERS bill is going to be on the floor. It's LB 147. It came out of committee and was placed on general file last week with the committee amendment. It's AM 926, which includes the other four bills into LB 147 to run that as a package. So it'll be up on Friday. We have Superintendent Dr. Logan and a few other folks. I believe Mrs. Erdenberger is going to be going down there as well, representing the district, to meet with Senator Coulterman and other stakeholders on Thursday to speak with senators and hopefully shore up support for that bill. Outside of that, we have the budget was heard last week. It'll be up tomorrow on final reading. And then other bills that we are interested in, LB 408, which is the 3% cap on political subdivision property tax requests, will be on the floor on Thursday the 22nd. We are opposed to that bill. It's on page 20 of the attachment. And then other bills on the floor that we should take note of. LB 364, the Opportunity Scholarships Income Tax Credit, we oppose. That's page 18 of the attachment. And LB 454, the School Property Tax Stabilization Act, we also oppose. That's on page 22 of the attachment. So with that, I would move we accept the Legislative Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Head. Moving on to item J1B, approval of the academic calendar for the 2021-2022 school year, and we have Mr. Smitbani here with us tonight. Good evening.
Good evening, President Dr. Holman, Vice President Ms. Erdenberger, Dr. Logan, members of the board. Please. Sorry, got a little excited there. Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Ray. All right, I'll get started. Thank you. One of the most challenging aspects I've found working at OPS is often very difficult to create solutions within our parameters that make all stakeholders uniformly happy. The academic calendar is certainly one of those situations. Therefore, I would like to focus on ensuring we are, 1, giving all stakeholders an opportunity for input, that this input is faithfully used to inform the final draft of the calendar. 3, transparently sharing with the community that we heard their feedback by sharing the results of the survey and providing rationale when we cannot make the changes some proportion of our community would like to see. And 4, continuously improving the process to allow for our district to better understand the wants and needs of our diverse community. To this end, tonight I will be sharing the results of our Calendar Committee survey for the 21-22 school year, the final draft of the calendar, and I will also offer some thoughts about how we will improve this process in the future. To set your expectations for what you will hear tonight, I can tell you that only 2 elements of the proposed calendar did not meet with the complete support from all stakeholder groups: spring break and the timing of the end of the year. We will discuss these decision points towards the end of the presentation, along with the decisions we ultimately made to the calendar that we bring for you tonight for your consideration and approval. This year's Calendar Committee survey received more responses than ever before. surpassing the previous record obtained for the previous calendar cycle by over 6,000 responses. The data shown here indicates the number and percentages of responses attributed to a specific group. This is not a response rate for any given group, just how many of the total population of the survey came from each of these groupings. Two notes. Those who completed the survey chose the group they most identified with, and the results of individuals who identified as OPS board members were excluded from the disaggregated results we will be discussing tonight. Regarding this last note, the removal of sharing the responses of those who identified as board members for the survey was done for two reasons. One, while board members were certainly welcome to complete the survey, it was not a requirement for you to do so. And two, more importantly, we felt that board members would not want their responses to influence the perspective of other board members. An important couple observations. Nearly 75% of responses came from parents and teachers. Many thanks to them. Also, a significant number of students also provided a response to the survey. Many, many thanks to all of those who were able to take the time to complete the survey and provide this critical feedback. We'll start with our points of concurrence, and we'll begin by defining our terms. For a topic to be considered a point of concurrence, each stakeholder group had to feel proportionally similar to one another. For example, if all groups except those identifying as a community member felt the start of the year was at the right time, this topic would not be considered a point of concurrence, given that group's disagreement with the results from all other groups. Therefore, each point of concurrence indicates an area where a majority of all stakeholder groups felt similarly to majorities of all other stakeholder groups. We found concurrence across 7 out of the 9 areas addressed in detail on the calendar survey. Our first decision point is regarding spring break timing. Very few from any group felt that the proposed spring break was too late. A majority of parents and students felt that spring break's timing was just right. However, a majority of responding community members and district staff, be they teachers, other school staff, principals, etc., felt that spring break was too early. Our first recommendation you will see on the calendar is to move spring break 1 week later. I hope this better meets expectations of community members and staff while also not moving break so much later that parents and students who felt it was just right to begin with are angered by the decision. There are some also additional benefits to this move. Our English as a second language students will have 50% more days with the addition of 5 days more for ELPA 21 testing than under the proposed calendar. And this still gets break done well in advance of students needing to take the NSCAS or NSCAS ACT. And finally, as was noted in the comment from one of our teachers, this removes the need to really rotate our conferences as was being considered, as the benefit is gone from having the conference the week before spring break. As this teacher indicated, this gives everyone a little break after the massive effort that is to undertake conferences before everyone gets a nice rejuvenating break over spring break. Our second and last decision point relates to the end of the school year. Specifically, teachers, other school staff, and students feel the year ends too late. Additionally, reading comments from staff would suggest that the concern is as we had anticipated, that staff react strongly to the need to work into the June months and after the Memorial Day holiday. Conversely, parents, administrators, be they at schools, programs, or central office, and community members felt that the end of the year's timing seemed just about right. This decision was one of the hardest to make. Personally, I have an extremely hard time disappointing teachers under normal circumstances, and given that it has been a long time since we've seen normal circumstances, it's especially hard to disappoint teachers now, given how hard they've worked. However, our recommendation at this point is to maintain the proposed end of the year. This is partially based on the fact that nearly 3 out of 4 parents who graciously responded to the survey supported the originally proposed end of school year. The primary reason is that we really can't think of a better solution to moving that end of the school year that wouldn't potentially create another issue at another point in the calendar, at another place in the calendar, where teachers might prefer that even less. I first considered the good solution that we received from our colleagues at the OEA, that we shorten fall break the week of the Thanksgiving holiday. However, digging deep in the data, we found that 32.12% of teachers strongly supported fall break being a week long in duration. However, 5% less, or 27.4% of teachers felt strongly that the end of the school year was too late. One piece I found was in developing a solution that would help us in the future to make these kind of tie-breaking decisions. So what we'd propose is in the future, when we conduct the calendar survey, that we provide a rank order item so that all respondents could include their prioritized selections for what's most important to them. So that when we find ourselves at this point, having proposed a calendar and needing to respond to feedback, we're able to better identify how folks would respond to that further decision without soliciting additional input through their ranked prioritized responses. That concludes the presentation, and I will now open myself to your questions.
Mrs. Cracky.
What is the date that we generally put our calendar out?
It's typically a little earlier than this time frame. It varies by year, but
Okay, and does that go along with other districts who are smaller and don't have so many things to consider, have had theirs out there like a little earlier than we are?
oftentimes that is the case. Other
Okay.
times we match up with them. It depends if we're
Okay.
doing a 2-year cycle or a 1 year.
And did we mail this to them? Did it go on internet? Did it go to their email? How did they know to respond to this?
There were first an anonymous link that was distributed broadly to folks who may have missed the survey, could provide it to others, providing to those who missed it. It was part of the board presentation as well. And then for those parents we had email for, we provided an emailed version of the calendar survey and then sent to all staff groups as well.
And do you think that staff I know that we would reach, but the parent group, guardian group, are they going to come back and tell us they didn't receive it? They all have an internet connection at home. So unlike what we hear on the news of other states that do not have that during this pandemic, I don't think that the people in OPS and all the parents realize that it is pretty unique that we were able to have that for everyone. So when nationally they talk about that, I always think back, well, we have ours, and all of our children have that opportunity. So then we're not going to hear from those parents who didn't click in.
At this point, no. We would bring it tonight for proposal to you.
Okay.
Certainly, I can tell you that is a consideration every time we do a survey. We did get more parents responding to this survey than ever before. I think that's for a number of reasons. One is word of mouth. Folks hear that a survey is going out and share that with their colleagues. I would also hope personally that it's as they see how we use the results and share them in a transparent way, folks feel that it's more a valuable use of their time to provide those results instead of, oh, no one's going to look at these anyway. So certainly we do see those things and continue to try to expand our influence to make sure we're working with schools who work with their families to get that valid, good email address where families will receive those requests for feedback. We're about to launch the climate and principal appraisal surveys as a bit of a plug. So I would hope any parents listening will keep an eye on their email box. We do intend to hold that open for a long period of time because we do incredibly value feedback from all stakeholder groups, especially parents.
And just so you know, and you probably do, that the calendar has always been an issue in OPS for years and years and years. No matter what it is, it's going to be an issue for someone. So it's good that they can, if we can move forward with the calendar so that they can see ahead of time, maybe that would be helpful if we're able to do that in the future.
Agreed. I think for many of us, we do feel the urgency and need to get it out to our community, and many will reach out and let us know. They are anxiously awaiting that calendar.
And they let me know too, so that's
I'm certain.
I'm passing it on. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Thielen.
Thank you. Looking at the survey, I took the survey, and each question was sort of proposed individually, right? And I think your idea of ranked choice was really going to help kind of weed out some of the issues there. But I'd also suggest that you put some context around that there are trade-offs and choices that have to be made. I did get some feedback that folks were sort of unaware after they took the survey that, you know, if I'd chosen this, then I was really indicating that I, you know, can't do this over here. So I think that would be helpful going forward.
I agree. Good suggestion. Thank you.
I wonder if you can speak a little bit to whether there's a concern about the end of the year coming back kind of after a break for what essentially will be finals time for high schoolers. Is that an educational concern? Maybe you're not the right person to ask on that, but is that something that was taken into account?
Let me see if I understand. So coming back after spring break?
No, won't we have a Memorial Day?
Oh, I see what you're asking. Thank you for clarifying. No, it would only be teachers coming back for those 2 closeout days on the 31st and then the 1st of June, 31st of May, 1st of June. Students in that Friday prior.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for clarifying.
That's all I've got.
Ms. Cassidy?
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. Thank you for your work. I also took the survey, and I marked myself as a parent, not as a board member. I'm wondering if you can just kind of recap. The last presentation kind of went through everything that was kind of on the table. Can you kind of recap? I'm looking at the calendar now, just so that the public knows what changed, what did not change. Are really the only 2 items that changed were the spring break and then keeping the end of the year, what was originally the original date. Can you kind of recap if there's anything else on here that we really need to focus on or anything that was a big change?
No, those were so we had 9 different areas essentially that we were asking for feedback on and would have considered changes across any of those 9 should the results came back suggesting a strong need to do so. And so I have on the screen, I believe it was the second slide.
Okay, I was just going to say, should I clarify, what we're seeing on the second slide is what is set in stone based on the survey?
Correct.
Okay.
So as originally proposed, brought back to you tonight.
Sorry, I should have phrased that.
Changes.
Okay,
No, you're fine.
that's what I wanted to know, is what we're seeing here is changes everything that we are looking at this evening.
Correct. And reflected in the additional attachment in kind of the traditional format.
Okay, great. That clarifies then. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Snipes, did you have a comment? Okay, I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss you. All right, thank you so much, Mr. Smith-Roney, for the presentation.
Gladly.
And Vice President Erdenberger.
She can't see me with my mask on that I'm, yeah, thank you very much. This was very useful, and I think it was really helpful to see the predominant percentages that showed up for some of these things, and it gives us all a sense of confidence that these decision points are backed by real information. One of the other points I was going to follow up on something Mrs. Kratke asked was I think that the website was also in the World Herald. So in addition to the emails being sent out to everybody, there was a website in the World Herald that if you just had missed it entirely, you could go on there too. So all of that being said, I think getting 10,000 people to respond is pretty impressive. And I understand the concern that the OEA had expressed when they were here last time about having to go into the 2 days after Memorial Day. It's always nice to be able to just drive home on that Friday and be done. But as you said, and as Mr. Thielen was responding, it wasn't clear that to push that back 2 days so that you would be done on that Friday would have meant getting rid of the fall break over Thanksgiving. And as I think you said, I just want to confirm, more people liked the 5-day Thanksgiving break than wanted the end of the school year to be pushed to Memorial Day or before Memorial Day. Is that right?
Correct.
So at this point, without the opportunity to rank, which we'll do in the future, we feel more confident that people want the Thanksgiving break. The other question I had here was the calendar. Does it show, one of the things we had talked about was to sort of start including, and I guess it does, the summer school schedule as well, to show that it's really, in some respects, a 12-year learning process for people that want to participate in the summer school programs. Did we have any questions about that, or is that something that's open to opinion surveys, or maybe next time around or something?
So we did ask a question on just response to the concept. And I think as we move to more, we had some conversations today, in fact, on the topic about, how do we capture the interest of staff, students, and others in how to utilize those days. So certainly we did receive support for the concept, but it's really ill-defined at the moment. And so working to better understand what the needs are and what our schools feel confident in being able to provide based on their identified needs, and to then kind of understand who's willing to support that effort and who's willing to engage in that effort, I think are some critical next steps that will require engagement of stakeholders in those decisions and discussions.
And I assume we'll learn some things just this summer because we have sort of non-traditional terms and sessions, and we can build off of that. Anyway,
Certainly.
Thank you for the information. It really helps make a decision. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Any other board comments, Ms. Cracky?
And I just want to go back to the calendar is being set, and we know when we'll be coming back, and so that is really spread out there so that our students will be coming back early for sport and music activities. Probably, those who want to participate in those things will have the opportunity to do so. Am I correct in my thinking?
If I understand right.
Swing choirs are already chosen, and then they start working. And the football teams certainly go out during the summer and already are doing whatever they do for their fall. Am I correct that they will have this information so they will be able to choose OPS, stay with us, and let's win the games?
I'm all for winning the games. Matches, contests.
Right.
All of them. Absolutely.
I just want to cheer for us and be sure that we get enough people out there and we want to go to the games.
Can understand. Absolutely.
Mr. Schmidt-Bonnie, just one last question. So if we were to approve this calendar tonight, when would the calendar be released to our families?
So the next step is to get it out of the Excel format that you see it on the posting, and get it to our phenomenal print and publications department and the amazing Shelley Dutiel, who takes it and puts it in the more traditional format that we're used to seeing. I have provided the initial draft, not being presumptuous of approval tonight, and suggested that with the approval of the board tonight, those drafting efforts can begin immediately. There are some subtle tweaks to the calendar, those permissive recovery and enrichment acceleration days. So there are some small changes she'll have to make. I don't speak for her work, but she does phenomenal work, and I would assume we'll get it out as quick as possible, as they too are getting calls. And we certainly, it's not necessarily about the calls, it's about the urgency behind them and wanting to get it out to our community so they can plan around that, be they teachers, students, parents, all stakeholder groups.
Great, thank you so much for the presentation. With that, I will entertain a motion to approve the academic calendar for the 2021-2022 school year as attached.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, it was moved by Mrs. Cracky and seconded by Mr. Head. Any discussion? Roll call, Mr. Ray?
Cracky.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Snipes.
Aye.
Snow.
Aye.
Thielen.
Aye.
Cassidy.
Aye.
Ernberger.
Aye.
Head.
Aye.
Holman.
Aye.
9-9.
Motion carries. Thank you so much. Now moving on to item J1C, approval of change order number 001 for Highland Elementary School Capital Improvements and Renovation Project from the 2018 bond program. And we have Dr. Sturba here with us this evening. Thank you.
Good evening, President Dr. Holman, Ms. Erdenberger, esteemed board, and Dr. Logan. What questions can I answer for you?
Mr. Thielen?
Thank you. Can you just speak a little bit to why this amendment is necessary and how these projects were chosen? Were they part of the original project conception? Mm-hmm. And then where the funds are coming from, because obviously this is an increase in spending.
Absolutely. It is not part of the GMP or the original scope of the bond work being done at Highland, and part of that is because it was those are things that were not seen at the beginning of the work being done. So as the bond work starts, we have our foreman go in periodically to make sure that things are going as we would expect. Our foremen are experts in the field in plumbing, electricity, carpentry, masonry, glazing, all of that. So as we get in, we start to see things that maybe weren't seen in the original scope of work. The first one, for example, is the fire alarm speaker that's needed. For our students or staff or visitors who are hearing impaired, we have to have strobes, and that's part of the fire code. So some of those things are just part of the scope of work that was not included, but is still needed to make the building safe.
And then again, just kind of where those funds are coming from.
So Mrs. Ernberger highlighted Catlin and Conestoga as projects where there were savings. Some of those savings, all of those savings go back into the bond, and then they're redistributed. Those bonds, the monies from those savings then are picked by OPS staff, by Jacobs, and by our foreman as the projects that should go forward in the work that's being done. At Highland, we're adding 11 new classrooms. So with that came additional work that needed to be done with the electricity that was coming in from the street, and other projects that our foreman designated.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to be clear, we're adding additional bond projects that we hadn't originally approved. So I just wanted to be clear about what we were doing and why we were doing it. I really appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely. And that's why it'll come across as a change project.
Mrs. Cracky?
I wanted to add that for the hearing impaired, I don't know if everyone is aware that when there are children who are not in another facility but in the main building and they're in the classrooms, that we have a drop down. Do we still have that drop down apparatus in the ceiling so that they are able to hear better?
So there's a strobe. Now it's just a visual.
Oh, okay. So it's a what? Tell me.
A visual. So there's a light strobe
Okay.
for our students who are hearing impaired.
Okay. And then is that present in all rooms as we're building, or is it just, so it'll be in the future
Yes.
for everyone?
Yeah, it's part of our fire code.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I will entertain a motion for approval of change order number 001 for Highland Elementary School capital
moved.
improvements and renovation projects.
So moved.
Is there a second? Was moved by Ms. Snipes and seconded by Mr. Thielen. Any further discussion? Roll call, Mr. Ray?
Smith.
Aye.
Snipes.
Aye.
Snow.
Aye.
Thielen.
Aye.
Cassidy.
Aye.
Erdenberger.
Aye.
Head.
Aye.
Holman.
Aye.
Cracky.
Aye.
9. Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, moving on to information items. Item J2A, College and Career Academies and Pathways Family and Community Engagement Update. We have Mr. Crow, Ms. Boyd, and Mr. Maskell here with us this evening. Good evening.
Slowly.
Dr. Crow, my apologies.
It's okay. Just don't let it happen again.
I promise you I will not. I'll make sure they put this on my paper the next time.
Thank you for this, Mr. Ray.
No doctor, but I can do
But you're such a good millennial.
it. You want the clicker?
I'm good here. Thank you. Good evening, President Dr. Holman, Vice President Erdenberger, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Logan. We're here tonight to discuss the plan to continue engaging stakeholders about our proposed college career academies and pathways, reflecting our commitment to expand access to rigorous, high-quality high school programming to each student we serve. These conversations will help families and partners better understand the proposal and allow us to hear from our community. So currently, our timeline has us kicking off this engagement session beginning early May and extending into June. This is dependent on how many people we have expressed an interest in and subsequently sign up for these sessions. Student and community services, curriculum and instruction support, district communications, and research will work closely to execute the engagement and efficiently and effectively by ensuring consistent and accurate information is shared with stakeholders. We'll do this by working with our partners in research to create a web-based enrollment form that allows our families to let us know if they prefer an in-person or virtual session. We will then take that information and schedule the applicable sessions in the medium that our families have identified as their preference. Last week, my apologies, we met with some community members to discuss the best ways to engage our families. They offered valuable insights, such as our need to explain the need for College, Career, Academy, and Pathways so the community understands, explaining what this program will achieve, and helped us with various outreach efforts and ideas for engagement. All of our sessions are going to be hosted within our high school communities. With regard to our multilingual families, the engagement sessions will be offered to existing engagement communities. These communities include, but are not limited to, Karen, Native, Nepali, Somali, and Spanish. We're working closely with Student Community Services, our English Learners Office, and bilingual liaisons to identify the best approach to engage multilingual communities. Once we've received those data from our research department regarding the interest in attending these meetings, additional family meetings may be offered in different languages as needed or desired by the families we serve. And I will turn this over to Mr. Maskell.
Thank you, Dr. Crow. Alongside our engagement team, work through the coming months will offer broad communication. In addition to the more targeted small group communication our engagement team will lead, broad communication to students, families, staff, and our broader community about the proposal. Informational posts, website updates, and live conversations will be available across our social channels and through live events in Microsoft Teams. We'll update information online to make it more accessible, for example, chunking information across a few different pages so it's not one long scroll of text for families and other stakeholders. We'll also reach out to community partners and other community groups to continue conversations there. As this timeline shows, we've been preparing. We are presenting to you, our board, this evening. And as Dr. Crow explained, we plan for those conversations and feedback opportunities to continue from May through June. July will give time to review who we've talked with and what we've learned from those conversations. In August, we'll share any updates to the proposal from these conversations with our community, with Board of Education consideration anticipated in September of 2021. We would be happy to entertain and answer any questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Ms. Cracky?
When you said high schools, do you mean every high school? In my mind, I was at least thinking that we would go north, south, somewhere east, somewhere west, for at least 4 live ongoing presentations that they hear about and know about, either on email or newspaper or even TV. Sometimes they're doing that too. They talk about things. So how are we doing this? Thank you.
That's a great question. Thank you. We will be going to all 7 of our high schools.
That's good.
We will do those in person, assuming that we have individuals from those high schools who opt to do it in person, because we are going to be allowing for an in-person and an online or virtual meeting. So however they want to do it, we're going to do it.
And the thing is, sometimes the audience is small in some of those groups, and they don't come out like they say they're going to, or you think they're going to, but we still have to make the effort, I think.
I agree with you completely.
Even if there's just 5 of them.
Agree completely. So the way that we're planning to do it is we're going to do it in groups of 10 to 15 individuals, simply because the research indicates that when you want to elicit more conversation and for individuals who may be more introverted, by having a smaller group like that, it allows for maybe those more demonstrative of us to not really take control of the situation and have their voices kind of overturn some of the...
Then are you suggesting that you'd have more than one meeting at Burke?
Well, again, depending on how...
If that is how it shows up with the people who say they want to participate?
Yes.
Really? You'd have more than one session at each high school?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Mr. Thielen?
Thank you, Dr. Holman. I guess my first question is just how are we kind of envisioning this summer communication and engagement? How will it be different from the sessions that we have had earlier this year regarding Academies and Pathways?
I will let... You want to talk about?
Mr. Thielen, they'll look different in a couple of ways. One, in those small group sessions that our engagement team will lead, we'll be able to talk some more tailored situations. The other item is, in addition to those small group sessions, multiple at each high school if families express interest, we will talk more to our students. We will talk more in broad terms to our families just about the proposal for college and career academies and pathways, where the previous one was also about feedback for our proposed student assignment plan that the board passed. So we've also taken feedback from questions we received, conversations like the ones Dr. Crow mentioned with stakeholders to see what stakeholders are currently understanding, where we can add to our explanations and introductions, where we can show the excellent opportunities already existing within high-quality high school programming currently in Omaha Public Schools. And so we've been hearing from some of our students who already have access to that and sharing those personal accounts about how they've accessed advanced courses, internships, structure to their high school experience that still allows them great opportunities to explore.
Thank you, Mr. Maskell. I think this is for Dr. Crow. I think you touched on this in your introduction, but can you share some of the more useful or highlight the input that you received from that smaller group that you've already met with, the small group of parents regarding kind of preparing for this summer engagement session?
Absolutely. So the meeting happened last Thursday and it was fantastic. We had a lot of great feedback, some very constructive, some individuals expressed some concern, naturally. And I'll just kind of break it up into those types of things. So some of the concerns is this process feels a little rushed. There was a concern that there's not going to be any STEM at Central. Wondering about the flexibility of things like this, right? So these are some of the things that we're going to take into account when we start to give the presentations and our listening sessions. But some of the really great things that we heard were we need to explain the need for the academy or the College and Career Academy and Pathways program so that the community understands. Explain the what, why, and what's going on in these programs and what they're planning to achieve. Listen, mostly, and Ms. Royden, I both kind of told everyone on that call, please email us with any questions you have. If we don't have the answers, we will absolutely get those. One of my favorites was kind of how to reach people, and it was some of the suggestions they gave is use the media, like Ms. Kratke kind of pointed out, community organizations, Facebook page, text messages, flyers, opting for some businesses, trusted businesses can post flyers and things like that. So that was the kind of information that we were garnering from them to try and figure out how best to engage our communities to make sure that their input is heard and their suggestions are taken into account and edited.
I appreciate that, and I do appreciate just kind of starting with the community and at the very beginning of the process to make sure that we're starting from the right place. How many? I mean, we've spoken to a little bit of this, but how many parents and students and teachers are we hoping to reach? Do we have a goal, or and I think you sort of alluded to the idea that we'll do as many sessions as we need to based on the interest. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. As far as our goal, obviously 100%. Understanding that that's probably not. Oh, I'm sorry. I do want to bring up one of the great offers, or one of the suggestions that we got is offer a Saturday session. So I think we were kind of thinking a Monday through Friday thing, and so naturally that was a fantastic idea for people who will be working during the week. So I don't know that we have a goal for how many we want there. We want 100% there, understanding that we will offer it as many sessions as we need to in order to make sure that everybody has the opportunity in our time frame to come and speak and learn, and for us to learn from them also. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you. My last question is, if the community input diverges, we've got, we're trying to bring in a model that's got some research behind it as far as how it works and what it does. If the community input diverges or suggests divergence from that model, kind of how do we anticipate dealing with that or adjusting to that?
I can let our curriculum folks kind of speak to what's going to happen outside of the model if there's something that doesn't work.
So first and foremost, I think it's important to reiterate what Dr. Crow and Mr. Maskell had mentioned, is we're there to provide information, but also to listen and take into consideration what we're being provided information on. I think it's also important to remember that when we provide an education to our students, that there are specific standards that we are called to meet. The current standards are called the College and Career Ready Standards. Those are the standards that every district and every school across the state of Nebraska have to meet. And so we need to make sure that those standards are guiding our work to ensure that we are providing the right opportunities, the relevant opportunities, and those opportunities that are going to help our students be successful when they graduate from Omaha Public Schools.
I guess, in my mind, we're not doing Academies and Pathways now, so this is something that we're adding that has its own standards and presumably there are some things about it that make the program work, right? And so I guess that's what I'm trying to get at is, if there's conflict there between how this program is supposed to be implemented, right, to make it an effective program, and the community input. Or maybe this is a question about how we communicate what's, the really core pieces of this program so that folks know right up front what the core pieces are. Does that make sense?
So I'm not sure when you said we don't currently offer Academies and Pathways, we do.
That's true.
So this is an evolution of what we are currently doing to become up to date. So our students have an opportunity to have the skills, the attributes of the portrait of a graduate to be successful when they leave us. So here is maybe a very simplistic example. When I was an elementary teacher, it was many years ago, okay, 23 years ago, because this is an example of how curriculum is an evolution throughout education. It will continue to happen in the future as well. So when I was a 5th grade teacher, when we were teaching students place value, when I first started teaching, we were to teach place value to the millions place value. Standards revision processes occurred. Our current one is College and Career Ready Standards. The place value expectation changed from millions to billions. As a teacher and as a district, we were responsible, but also required to make sure we were teaching to that standard of education so that I could provide my students what they needed to be successful in 6th grade. This is very similar. It is similar, making sure that our students have academies or pathway options to be successful, not just today, but the next step in life is when they leave us and go into the real world.
Yeah, I see how it's similar in the sense that, this is an evolution of the curriculum, but we don't have Academies and Pathways at all of our schools, right? It is not a requirement of our current standards.
We do have pathways in all of our schools currently.
Yes, every school has pathways available to some students. The issue is that we do not have something available for everyone. We have something available for our top performers in every school. But we, across the board, we don't have something for everyone. And that's part of the challenge moving forward, is to make sure if you look at the portrait of a graduate, we have that in place for many students, but not nearly enough. Probably, I don't want to say percentages of where we are right now exactly, but we don't have high quality options for all kids, and that's where this is going.
Great, yeah. I appreciate that. So I guess what the core of my question here is, there are these standards that we are trying to implement, right? And to make sure that they're successful, we have to implement them in a certain way, right? And so how are we going to negotiate or communicate to the public which parts of what we want to implement are non-negotiable so that we can get what we need to get done, and which parts are, kind of up for community input. Does that make sense?
So yes. So some of using your language when you mention the word non-negotiable, there are certain things that we do because that's our job and responsibility. So if I were to narrow it down to 4, the first one would be program structure. Obviously, the program structure that we're currently operating under is Academy or Pathway, okay? That's a structure of how you deliver your academic program, and that has been determined. The second one would be the alignment of the Nebraska, alignment to the Nebraska Department of Labor. We want to make sure that our students are in relevant and rigorous courses that are also aligned to high wage, high skill, and in demand positions. So they have a greater opportunity to be successful when they leave us. The third one is taking a look at the curriculum, which is kind of what we've been talking about. There are specific standards, there's career clusters through the Nebraska Department of Education. We want to make sure that we stay true to that, like we do with all of the content that we create within the Omaha Public Schools. Okay, so that's the curriculum piece. And part of that curriculum determination would be the curriculum writing. We're responsible in the state of Nebraska to create course guides for courses, and we're also responsible for creating the courses in the course sequence. So those are things that we do on a daily basis in curriculum instruction support for all of our students, 0 through 21. And then the third piece, or the fourth piece, would be staffing. Human resources is responsible and has certain procedures, policies, guidelines, legal pieces for staffing. What we would be able to do is take a look at, Dr. Crow had mentioned that there was a input session last Thursday night. If there is a particular school who would like to explore more STEM opportunities, we'd love to hear about them. I mean, every one of our schools has science, technology, engineering, and math of some sort. We'd like to hear about it. That's something we could potentially work with. We would like to work with those individual schools and community.
That makes a lot of sense. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Vice President Erdenberger.
Thank you. Actually, I'm going to go out of order of the questions I had and follow up on what Mr. Thielen was saying, the negotiable and non-negotiable. We sat through a lot of public comments about things that weren't happening in the Academies and Pathways, or criticisms about the way people perceived that it was going forward. And one of the ones that we heard a lot was the requirement that every student in the school must commit to some academy or pathway, depending on what the nature of the school is. And I guess that's an example of something that the question is that a negotiable or non-negotiable? Is that a core piece of what we're talking about? Or is that something that by the time we come around to September, that might not be how it works anymore? I think, and that's just one example, but I guess that's kind of the question of when we sit down with these groups, we say to them, we must meet NDE standards. You know, we have identified these jobs, so on and so forth. So we know what things that, you know, no amount of input can really change some things. What things are still on the table, I guess, is my question.
Well, I think Mrs. Comine mentioned some of the things that we're really trying to make sure we anchor our work in. And as Mr. Thielen mentioned earlier, we have taken a look at the research, and one of the components of that is ensuring that we're providing some sort of focus to students. We're not forcing or creating that type of an experience. It's that whole opportunity that freshman year for the freshman seminar class to explore, for a student to understand their interests and what might they want to follow in for a pathway. There will be an opportunity to change if there's something, if it's not quite a good fit for them. But we also know that the research talks about the importance of having a focused experience, and that the courses build upon each other so the student has a chance to go deeper into their exploration of that learning to be able to get to that capstone, so that you can be reflective and know what you've learned. But I think it also goes back to the importance of that portrait of a graduate that's talked about, and ensuring that our students are, we talk about transferable skills, and when you think about what that is, it's the collaborator, the communicator. No matter what your content is, you know that those are skills that we want to pack a suitcase full of tools for a student to be able to leave and go, I can do this. No matter what content I'm in, these skills of a portrait of a graduate will help me and guide me to those next steps.
And I'm very persuaded by that, but I know that there's differences of opinions all over. And I guess maybe what I think Mr. Thielen is saying is that to the extent that you've got information that says, you know, every student has to commit to something because it works for them. This is what the benefit of that is. Just making it clear as you go into these that there's something, we're not here to talk about can they avoid it entirely? Because the answer is this is a key piece of it. So just being sure that you know what the key pieces are and can tell people why that's not on the table. But then to go on to some of my questions, is this something that you have to pre-register for? And let me talk about it's kind of going back to what Mrs. Kratke was saying. If you announce that you're going to be doing this at 10 o'clock in the morning at Burke High School, if you end up having 100 people show up, who's going to be there that you have sufficient, do we anticipate covering so we can break it up into groups of 15, or do we just let 15 come at a time and schedule another meeting? Just curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So we're going to be working with our colleagues in research, and Mr. Schmidt-Bonnie can come up here and give a little talk on this if my answer doesn't satisfy your question. We will create an online survey through Qualtrics like we do everything. We will have them register. We will have a time slot for them to be able to come, so that way they're not standing outside waiting, anything like that. We are going to employ a train-the-trainer type model. So that way we're going to be teaching the individuals in the schools how to talk about this and how to educate about this and how to listen. Because assuming, just for the sake of argument, there's 70 meetings, right? If we're doing these small groups, it is untenable for the individuals, my colleagues behind me, to attend every one of those meetings over the course of a few months. So we have thought about that, and that's kind of how we're planning to tackle it.
Okay.
Is that
one of the things you mentioned was student engagement, which I think is a really key piece. You didn't have it on the slide, although somebody mentioned teacher engagement. And I'm just wondering what your plans are for having teachers be a core part of the stakeholder group for a couple of reasons. I know that when I was teaching, a lot of my parents and students thought of me as the source of the information. They are not likely to call you or Dr. Logan or anybody else here. They know, they've talked to Ms. Erdenberger before. They'll ask her, what is this about?
Yeah.
So focusing on teachers as a specific stakeholder, as a source of information and input as to what's going on. I just want to make sure that's...
Yeah, my slide was clearly not clear enough. We are going to invite parents, teachers, students. We're going to invite all of our stakeholders that we can in order to participate. Yeah.
And at these meetings, one of the things that you talked about, and non-negotiable sounds obstreperous. Let's go with key foundational element. How's that? Was the labor, the transferable skills, the high wage, high demand skills. Do you anticipate that there will be people that are from the chamber or from the unions or anything at these meetings to help back you up as to why this particular academy or pathway that we're offering in X, Y, and Z schools satisfy that objective?
Ms. Erdenberger, I'll step in on that one. I think one of the things we're looking at, certainly for the broad communications, is hearing from students who've really benefited from it. One of the student stories that I've heard recently is from a pathway completer who found out that that particular topic may not be for them in adult life, but they want to pursue another profession connected to it. So that's an example of that transferable skill. So whether it's students who benefited from the program, experiences of other communities who've gone through this process and seen the benefits from expanding opportunities and access for students, or business partners who are already working with our school communities. I can't say that it necessarily will be a part of every conversation, but it will certainly be part of the overall conversation throughout the spring and summer.
I could just imagine that if you're at a meeting with parents who are disinclined to think this is a good idea, but you have, business people saying, oh my goodness, this pathway accomplishes this and we need it, that would be a useful part of our conversation. And what is the expectation, and maybe this isn't the right question or place, but what is the expectation for board member participation? Can we just come to anyone we want? Do we have to make sure that we don't have all of us show up at the same one?
We'll certainly look at how we can work with our board leadership to figure out how we can invite you to sessions that you might be interested in. Over the last 3 weeks or so, many business leaders have reached out to me. I've started to meet with several business leaders. Some state senators as well have reached out to me in reference to their excitement about the opportunities with our academies and pathways. And, as we've acknowledged, kind of a little bit of a wobbly start, that we're very excited to continue to chat with them and to engage other stakeholders, groups, neighborhood groups. I know we're presenting for the South Omaha Neighborhood Association in May, as well as several other groups that we'll be reaching out to because they have expressed an interest in learning more about it. As many people here know, we are frequently asked to participate in workforce development in some form or the other, and what we're trying to do is converge all of the interests that we have in a bunch of different, from many different industries, around aligning where their interests are with our academies and pathways to ensure that the things that they are expressing interest in or with our students align with them having some real life-sustaining wage opportunities when they leave us. So that is a part of our journey as well. But we have certainly begun many of those meetings each day. I was in a meeting today and it was about something completely different, and a person made a nexus to that and supporting the academy at a specific school around the project that we were discussing. So that is certainly caught fire.
I think that would be really, really useful in terms of people can think that we know what we're talking about because we read all the academic journals, or rather you do. But having somebody from the plumbers union sitting there and saying, we can't wait for more kids to graduate, can help mollify parents to a certain extent, I hope. Thank you. I'm done. Thank you.
Ms. Snipes?
My questions were actually answered, but I have to just express again my excitement as someone who has a background in workforce development. I was going to tell you, Jane, you can go up to Heartland Workforce Solutions and ask them about H3. I mean, it was a very strong focus for us, and it was one of the only things that I would look at when I was trying to help someone, just because of the possibilities. I think that what I continue to hear, though, is communication, and I appreciate, Mr. Crow, you were with us at SONA a while ago, and I just really appreciate, I see the intent to want to properly communicate, and I really appreciate that. And so the South Omaha Neighborhood Alliance, my members go crazy when I say association. The South Omaha, no, I do it too on accident, though, on accident. But we will have a presentation, and you were talking about board involvement, Jane. I guess one of the things I think of us as board members, we're also community members, and if we're in a position where we can be a support, I would like for us all to do that. So I will always offer up the South Omaha Neighborhood Alliance, since I'm their president, I can do that. And any other way that I can be a support as well. I think we all have networks and different platforms, and I think we have to practice a little bit of, we call it in the nonprofit world where I'm at, relational organizing, but we have to tell someone. I heard someone earlier say maybe it was word of mouth, and you would be amazed at what word of mouth can do, and it can do a whole lot more than flyers a lot of times. And so I think this is a united effort, and I think that we all want to do what we can. So I appreciate the presentation tonight. I love the thought of the train the trainer. I think that's a really, really good idea, and I highly support that. And so like I always say, any way I can help, just let me know.
Thank you, Ms. Snipes. Mr. Head?
Thank you, President Dr. Holman. And I think most of my questions have probably already been answered as well, and thank you for the presentation and your work on this. I was just kind of looking for the 5 W's, the who, what, when, where, why. So it sounds like we're looking to engage, basically anybody who's a stakeholder, right? So parents, students, both, current and former, business, everybody else? Are we going to have specific meetings set for, you know, this will be a parent meeting, this will be a student meeting, this is business, or how are you going to attack that?
So our thinking, and if you think it should be done differently, please let me know. We want to not necessarily have these homogenous groups meet, because oftentimes it can tend to be an echo chamber where they're saying the same thing and hearing the same thing and they're repeating the same thing. If we can make it a little bit more diverse, then maybe there's the opportunity to hear more views, opinions, the opportunity to not be involved in groupthink and all of these other psychological terms that I'm sure I'm going to get yelled at later for using. But what are your thoughts on that?
No, I think that sounds good, and, you know, mixing it up so that, you know, like as you said, we don't have a lot of groupthink and a lot of people just sitting there agreeing with each other. So if we can have more of a diverse, sorry, that might be mine.
No, that was mine. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, if we can have more of a diverse attendance at the meetings, I think that would probably be helpful. But
Great.
Again, I'm not necessarily the expert in it, so.
Yeah, so it sounds like you are.
And tailing on to Mrs. Kratky's question about where the meetings are going to be. So, you know, understanding you're going to have them at the existing high schools, but with the two new high schools, you know, obviously there's not really a set group of students or families there yet, but we obviously know who's probably going to be there based on, you know, where people currently live. So how are we identifying those folks and engaging them so that they also know, you know, they have a stake in putting together, I guess, their future school?
Yeah, so because those high schools are going to be built in existing areas of the city that are currently we have students in, we're just simply going to use the current 7 boundaries.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we're not going to section off, you know, even though these kids currently go to Burke or, you know, South or Bryan or what have you, we're not going to section them off and say, you know, yeah, they're currently in that area, but that's, you know, going to be in the new Westview or Buena Vista area, so we're going to apply them to.
That's correct. So, another reason for that is at our high schools we just have such a high mobility rate that, you know, just because you're living in a specific home attendance area does not necessarily mean that they
you're gonna stay
attend.
there.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I guess my biggest question is the time frame adequate? I know really only it looks like there's going to be 2 months of engagement, May and June, and then, you know, kind of put everything back together in July, present it in August, and then, you know, pass it in September. So is 2 months of engagement? I know anecdotally we've heard a lot that, you know, getting engagement from families and students and everybody is difficult during the summer, and I would imagine that this summer might even be worse, just, you know, looking back on the year that we've had, and everybody's kind of burnt out right now.
Yeah.
So I guess tailing that into the Mr. Thielen's question, is there a goal for how much feedback or input we want? And if we're not able to be as successful as you would hope this summer, would we be willing to extend it out into, you know, next fall?
Let me answer that. Right
Sure.
now, this is our time frame. When we look at any other initiative that we've done in the school district, this is actually longer than the period that we've done engagement. So for example, when we did the boundary meetings, initially we were only scheduled to have 2 boundary meetings, 1 high school and 1 elementary. And then we went from 2 to 8 boundary meetings. We had 1 at every high school and then 1 for elementary schools in the southern area of our district. We did that work over about 3 weeks. It was like seemed like every night for 3 weeks we were engaging in our boundary discussions. We had some groups that were pretty large. This is obviously before we couldn't be as close together. Some groups were very, very small. It was easy to see that as each meeting went, we got smaller and smaller numbers of people. So we could kind of see when we had reached kind of a tipping point of these are the people that are really interested in the boundaries. And we'll do a similar thing here. So if for some reason we don't get to that tipping point, then we might come back and regroup. But based on our experience with engaging communities, usually there's maybe like any sort of funnel, a larger group at the beginning, and then the groups get smaller and smaller. And we're not looking for people to repeat, so we're looking for you to come And so in the boundary meetings, we had some people that came to every boundary. We had a kind of a group that came to every boundary meeting here because of the kind of personalization around the high school programming, Academies and Pathways. We are looking to engage families for a more intimate setting with a much smaller number. So if that happens, and if that should happen, it would be very unusual, but we certainly would certainly make an adjustment. But right now, we feel that a 2-month time frame is plenty of time. You know, in terms of when it is, if it's during the school year, people are busy. If it's in the summer, then people are busy. If it's, you know, in the fall, then people are busy with activities. So there's not really going to probably be, and the fact that people don't necessarily have to leave their home, they can do it from wherever they are. It gives us a lot more flexibility with people and their schedules because they don't necessarily have to come in person. So we feel comfortable that we are where we need to be. We also need to make some critical decisions about the future of how we're going to move forward. And, you know, the kids can't wait. I mean, kids are not getting opportunities now. So we really want to be able to move this forward, and the children who are not currently available, who can't currently, do not have a high quality option, to have a high quality option.
All right, thank you. And yeah, I appreciate that, and yeah, I completely understand that, you know, regardless of when in the year you hold the meeting, people are always going to be busy. I just want to make sure that, you know, we're not making the assumption that everybody's been heard when, you know, people might be on vacation or have sports, or, you know, they might just say, okay, we're done with the school year, I'm not doing anything OPS related until August. You know, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't want to be involved. They're just, you know, checked out for whatever reason.
And like Dr. Logan said, we're hoping with the being able to do it virtually, that if they are on vacation in Disney doing something, that they'll have a night where they can log in and have their voices heard.
Yeah, and hopefully that'll definitely help.
Yeah.
See, I think that's actually about it that I had for now, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Head. Mr. Snow?
Thank you, Madam President. Majority of my questions have been answered, but I want to go back to what Vice President Ernberger was talking about with Melissa Comine, talking about not the non-negotiables, but kind of this is what we are, this is our goal, this is what we want, that portrait of a graduate. Is there a way we can get that, everything you said earlier today, in a document that we could share with our community, that parents and students know, as well as businesses know, that this is the goal of the district with these Academy and Pathways, no matter which academy or pathway this student is in, as well as the requirements that are set forth by the state of Nebraska as well?
So yes, we can provide that. I would ask that you send some specifics of what you would like to Mr. Ray, so we can
Well, I don't
cover
have
all
any
of that.
I just want to know that if I'm going to go to a meeting, if I'm a parent or a community member, I want to know what are the things that are concrete and what are the things that we're going to talk about. Because I do have a concern about having a meeting open where you're hoping business people show up, and then you have parents and students, and then a business person shows up, the conversation kind of get long because nobody's on the same page. And I'm not assuming that I know how you're going to facilitate this. I'm just saying from where I'm sitting right now, I think that would be helpful for me, as well as some of the people I know, if they're going in there and they're like, okay, so I'm going into this meeting. These are the things that the district says that will happen in this. These are the non-negotiables. These are the things that we can talk about. You know, what kind of career and pathway. These are the top jobs in the state of Nebraska that are out there, and this individual speaking or whatever. But I think that would be very helpful and will button up a lot of, so you're not wasting your time with people that are going to be, they don't know what they don't know. So you've seen this before. So.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. My apologies. Okay, so you brought up two really good things. One, the way the facilitation is going to happen, we are going to have a presentation that everyone is going to see. It's going to be uniform. It is going to let everyone know kind of the constraints and what we're currently working in, and then it will offer the kind of those things that we do have some leeway on. So the other thing was that we don't know what we don't know, and we're kind of hoping that the way that we're going to uniformly do it for the individuals who opt to do it virtually and those who attend in person are all going to see the exact same presentation. That'll kind of control for, some of those conversations that I think maybe you're a little worried about.
Thank you. And I have a follow-up on that, Dr. Crow. What do you hope is your takeaway from this? And not in a communication way, but in a, what do we hope to do with this information?
Oh, the information that we're garnering.
garnering.
My apologies. I thought you meant.
No offense, Mr. Maskell.
He's hurt. So ideally, we're going to try and gather the information that we have been given from our community members, from our stakeholders. And we're going to take it. It's going to be a lot of open-ended questions. We're going to have an exit survey that they're going to fill out. Mr. Schmidt-Bonnie and his brilliant research team are currently putting together. Then they are going to content code and thematically analyze what has been said, going to disaggregate it. We will aggregate it by schools, obviously, and then present that information to the board.
I appreciate that, and just one thing I would like to see in that is when you do present that, show the change that you did make or the influence that the surveys had on the Career Academies program moving forward. That's all I had. Thank you, though.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Snow. Ms. Cassidy?
Thank you. My colleagues have asked great questions. I think most of mine were asked. I just wanted to touch on something that one of my main questions Mrs. Erdenberger somewhat touched on. I'm liking what I see. I mean, the public asked for more engagement. We heard it. We got it emailed. We got phone calls. We heard a lot. So I commend the district for rolling out this engagement tour. I kind of feel like this is a little engagement tour to engage everyone. I was concerned that I didn't see teachers on here, but I do understand that would be my only suggestion. I feel like from what at least I've received as a board member, most of what I actually got a lot more from teachers than I did parents. And I think that we need to I just want to reiterate that teachers will be very much engaged. I think that all these groups are critical to the buy-in process, but I think that if we don't get the teachers, I think the teachers trickle down to everyone else. Teachers can aid parents. If the teachers have a complete buy-in and are excited about these changes and excited about this curriculum and the possibility of what can be, they can bring all the other groups on board. And I feel like, I don't think we're quite there yet from what I'm hearing still from teachers. I think teachers are still feeling like they don't have a voice, that this was possibly pushed onto them and that they don't have a choice. So that would be my only suggestion, is that we highly, highly engage our teachers and make them a part of this piece.
Yes, thank you. And again, I sincerely apologize that that was left off my slide. We absolutely...
You knew you would ask.
Right. I was teeing it up. We absolutely believe that our teachers are the bedrock for our kids, right? We are absolutely going to include them.
Yep, good to hear. Otherwise, all my questions really have been answered, so good job, colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cassidy. Ms. Crackey?
I'd like to think when we're talking about notification, one clear way that you can't mess up, I think, is, I don't know how many families we have, but I would suggest one letter if we have the money to do it. I know that's a high cost, but send a family letter that these will be taking place on these times and dates and places. And that way, I think you've clearly done everything you can to notify all of them. And then when we talked about right now we have magnets, so in our schools now, students are attending where they feel comfortable and are doing things with the magnets. So as we go to this and drop that, we'll probably still keep pieces in that, in the curriculum from what they're already doing. And when you talked about having the meetings and how many people might you need to staff attend, I'm thinking of on-call, emergency call. In other words, our teachers are pretty, our staff, somebody's going to be close to those locations of the 9 schools. And so if they see an abundance of people coming in, they can give them a quick call. I need help, there's too many people here. I mean, it just seems like a sound thing, so you don't always have to be there at everything. So I hope that that would be helpful to you. I don't know.
Great, thank you for those suggestions. Thank you.
Any other board comments or questions? Thank you all so much for spending your time with us tonight and providing
Thank you.
such a thorough presentation and
Thank
answering
you.
our questions. Dr. Crow. No, I was just re-emphasizing Dr. Crow.
That was good, thank you.
All right, moving on to J2B, Policy Committee update. Mr. Thielen.
Thank you. Just a second here. There. So the policy committee has met a couple of times, and we've been working hard on 2 particular policies, 4404 and 5404, remote work by district staff, and the policy on parent-guardian communications regarding police questioning and police action in the schools. So expect to see some changes on those at the next board meeting, proposals from the policy committee. Also, at the next board meeting, we've also heard from the administration on the updated student code of conduct, and so we'll have an updated version of that for approval at the next board meeting as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thielen. And moving on to J2B, Budget and Audit Committee updates. I will present this information to you. So we had our meeting on April 15th, and myself, Mr. Snow, Mr. Head, and Mr. Thielen were all in attendance. Some things that we covered, starting with an update on the internal control issues from the 2019-2020 audit. Mr. Roberts reviewed our material weaknesses as well as our significant deficiency for financial reporting and what they're doing right now and what they have in place to address those issues. If you want further information about that, I can certainly share that with you. Also, he reviewed the Sr1 Fund update. Currently, we had a total allocation of $23.2 million, and a lot of that money was used for iPads and connectivity services to support remote learning. We have 5 reimbursements submitted to the state totaling $16.3 million, and 4 of those have been paid already. ESSERS 2 and ESSERS 3, with ESSERS 2 fund, we received an allocation of $86.4 million under the Act. And under this Act, the state, with ESSERS 3, the funds have been made available to the state right now, but they are not yet available to the district. And so some grant allocations have not been released. Right now, we are currently defining a process for the board, community, and other stakeholder groups' engagement on setting budgets for both the ESSERS 2 and ESSERS 3 fund. The 2020-2021 budget amendment, there is a need to amend our budget for the special building fund this year. In 2018, our bond projects, we have particular construction of new schools, which are significantly ahead of the schedule due to favorable winter conditions, and the availability of additional labor. So basically, the projects were sped up due to favorable conditions on our behalf, which is fantastic. And so the district is asking for additional spending authority, which is needed to enable these projects to continue at their current pace. So since we're so far ahead of what we had typically expected to be at, they are asking for additional spending authority so that they can go ahead and continue with these projects instead of putting them on hold. And so with that, we will have to ask for an amendment for the budget. And right now, we currently have the cash on hand, so there will be no impact at all to the change on levy or taxpayer dollars or the use of reserves to to do this, and amending our budget will require publishing a notice in the paper, holding a public hearing, and requiring a majority of the board to approve. So it's basically the same process that we follow in approving the annual budget. It's recommended that the proposed amendment be voted on at the May 17th board meeting. So I'll be looking forward to that. 2021-2022 budget update. The first consolidated draft budgets will be available to us by late June. There will be a monthly budget and audit committee meetings in June, July, and August to review the progress. And then the budget will be finalized on or around August the 25th. We will have small group workshops that will take place approximately the week of August the 30th. And the board will vote on the 2021-2022 budget at the September 9th meeting. Quickly, Series 2021 general obligation bonds. The board authorized the sale of $140 million of bonds at the February 18th meeting. There was a successful auction that took place on March 10th, and the winning bidder purchased the bonds at a premium purchase price of $155.2 million with a total interest cost of 1.69%. And that transaction was settled by wire transfer on March the 30th of this year. Many of you may have already been informed or been watching on the news about the Sarpy County Treasurer's audit. With that, the treasurer erred in the calculation of school districts and what were due on the OPPD 5% gross in lieu taxes paid to the county. Some of the districts were overpaid, some were underpaid. We were underpaid. We were one of those districts who were underpaid $1.4 million over the past 3 years. Right now, their county officials will be in touch with us, but they're asking for some time, obviously, to identify a solution to take care of these issues with the corrective action plan. Finally, student fees reporting. Statute requires that the board annually reviews the amount of money collected and waivers provided in the state student fee policy. The reporting for the 12 months ended on May 31st and will take place at the July meeting. So we will be sending to the state fees and calculations that are required to the state. And that will be it for the Budget and Audit Committee update. If any of you have any questions. Mr. Smith?
Once we do make that amendment, it goes into effect immediately, right? So we can go ahead and continue with our project?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions, Mr. Snow?
No question, but comment. I do believe it has to be 2/3 of board vote.
Is that a majority?
Majority. Am I correct? So, because you're making an amendment to that, so.
I apologize. I'm just reading from the sheet.
No,
Okay, thank you. So 2/3. Thank you so much for that correction. Any other questions, comments? Fantastic. All right, and we have 2 receipt of reports for tonight. Item K1, auction results March 2021, and item K2, CBOC update of the Phase 1 and Phase 2 bond programs for March 2021. Moving on to closed session, Vice President Erdeberger.
I move that the Board of Education go into closed session for the protection of the public interest and for the prevention of needless injury to the reputation of individuals to discuss with the superintendent, secretary of the board, and legal counsel negotiations.
Second.
There was a motion by Vice President Erdeberger and a second by, I didn't catch that. Thank you, Ms. Cracky. Any discussion? Roll call, Mr. Ray.
Snipes.
Aye.
Snow. Thielen.
Aye.
Cassidy.
Aye.
Erdenberger.
Aye.
Head.
Aye.
Holman.
Aye.
Cracky.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
9 aye.
Motion carries. Let me remind the board that the purpose for closed session is for the protection of the public interest and for the prevention of needless injury to the reputation of individuals to discuss with the superintendent, secretary to the board, and legal counsel negotiations. Let the record reflect that the board went into closed session at 8:19 p.m. Let the record reflect that the board came out of closed session at 8:30 p.m. Meeting adjourned.